Guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to. Hey guys, this is Rick and we're back with another episode of Weed to No Basis. So if you're watching or you're listening, then you are on a Weed to No Basis. So today's one of those topical discussions, and this came about as a result of an interview I was on. I was actually on a panel, and no, it wasn't a panel. I was on stage, and I was being interviewed one-on-one, and the question came up around the political scene. And I don't want to take a political stance, so I want to be clear as we roll into what I'm going to share this is an apolitical statement. This is really my take on the whole industry right now. Is it's a human issue. It's not about politics. It's not about banking, finance. It's not about big drugs or big pharma. It is about those things, but at its core, what this industry is about, the cannabis industry, is about us, people. So I want to plant that seed before I talk about this topic, because it was an eye-opener for a lot of people and for me, because this question was very provocative. And so the question is this, is where does this industry fit in the grand scheme of things? Especially, I'm gonna distill it down to here in the US, in this country. So if we really break it down and we talk about the political climate, it's the right and it's the left. You see what I mean? There's like, let's just call them liberal and conservative, okay? And this isn't about me or you, this is about what exists. There's the far left and the far right. And I'm gonna write down notes because for me, this is a very visual conversation. So we have the far left and the far right. Now the far left has traditionally been, let's just say, very liberal in how one chooses to live their life, how they choose just their train of thought, their way of living, just their process, if you will. The other side of the fence, if you will, or of the house, is the far right. Let's just say conservative. Now that's always been red and blue, the states, there are different colors. It exists whether we like it or not. Now here's where the question was so relevant as far as the political climate and what's going on and where's cannabis going, because I'm gonna say this, cannabis, the plant, is the ultimate unifier. It's the ultimate unifier. It's what's happening, guys, what's happening as a result of the controversy and misunderstanding around this plant is the unification of a nation that has not been so unified. And again, this is just my take. This is my viewpoint. This is my perspective. So let me break it down. Traditionally, the industry, the cannabis industry, has been very Cheech and Chong. It has. It's been stoner nation, being lazy and non-productive, and reefer madness, and that's okay. That existed, and for a lot of people, if we look at it as a political spectrum thing, that would tend to rest on the far left. Okay, let's just be honest. And so the folks on the far right, let's just call them the suits, the conservatives, policymakers. They have pointed to the far left traditionally and said they're very bad. Those are the stoners, they don't have a place here. And the people on the far left had said, you suits are no good for us. We just want to be free and live our life. And if we take this as a big, wider spectrum, that's the way it exists. There's no real middle ground. It's just you're either red or you're blue, you're left or you're right. And that's how things have existed. That's how I was raised too. Whether we like it or not, guys, whether you believe what I'm saying or not, it is true. Fox News, CNN, it is left, right, red, blue. It always has, always will be, but here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. Not too long ago, guys, the cannabis industry began to emerge from the dark side. It began to emerge from the black market when legalization started to happen, and it still is happening. That means that somebody in a voting body, a congressman, somebody had to vote okay. Let's make this okay. So now let's get really real about what that means. Not too long ago, John Boehner, the former Speaker of the House, joined the board of a major cannabis company. You can Google that. It happened. Who was John Boehner? Republican, former Speaker of the House, the U.S. House, not Texas, not Iowa. What happened? What happened? You see, because when you really think about what I just said and what has recently happened, somebody on the far right who was a leader of our country is now on the board of a major cannabis company in the United States. How does that make somebody on the far left feel to know that somebody on the far right is now playing in their turf? Think about that for a second. You see, because when I thought about it, it became very provocative. And I thought to myself, if I was on that far left side, how would I feel about a suit engaging in my turf? But here's the thing. You see, because some of those suits, if you will, they're changing policy. Because some of those suits, my words, guys, not anybody else's, are now engaging in a world that they've heretofore or prior had thought was very, very bad. Now that they're in this world, suddenly there's a whole different, everything's a little mushier. Here's what I'm getting at. So I drew this diagram here, guys, and if you can see it, let me turn it this way. It says, it's hard to see with the light, but it's basically, it's the right side and the left side. And in the middle is this chasm, this gully, this valley, this, let's call it no man's land. And it's where nobody except like a Bernie Sanders would play. Somebody who was kind of not really on both sides. But this is the world we grew up in here in the United States. Now, let's talk about this as the cannabis world. See, there's been the far left, the people who have engaged in cannabis consumption for years and years and years, and the far right, where I was, and they said this is very bad, stay away. Now you have people on the far right, politicians, business icons, business leaders, playing on the left side. And now you have people on the left side playing on the right side. Here's what I mean by that. So right now, as I record this, as we're talking about this, we're here in Texas. There are 19 bills in the House. There are 19 bills that are being proposed to be made into law in the state of Texas that are going to move the left closer to the right. What that means, if I use this diagram, guys, is that gap in the middle right here is going to get smaller. It's going to get smaller. Now, I know some folks might be thinking, and I'm not a mind reader, but some of you might be thinking, let's call you the traditional cannabis consumer, okay? The traditional cannabis consumer. You might be thinking, I don't want those people in my world. And for a variety of reasons, you're right. You have a valid point there. I don't want those suits in my world. I've been fine. And on some levels, the people on the far right, it's happening, are saying, I don't want those people in my world. But the truth is, guys, it's too late for that. You see, because the plant has unified us. You see, right in that middle ground, guys, the place where politics have not been able to bridge, the place where religion has not been able to bridge, the place where not even the best and brightest have been able to bridge because we have been so staunch in our beliefs, the right and the left, that middle ground is now, it's now flourishing because of a plant. You see, now the gap is being bridged because of a plant. And I don't know that we've realized the power of what we've really created here as entrepreneurs in the industry, because as an entrepreneur and a consumer, that's probably you. If you're listening to this, if you're on the weed to know basis, you are likely a consumer and an entrepreneur. In a sense, you're building something from the left and the right, and you're playing right in that middle ground, and it's because of one thing: cannabis. I want you to sit on that for a second and really noodle on that, because I'm not saying we shouldn't be out there with groups like NORML and marching on the Capitol. I'm not saying we shouldn't be writing your senators and congressmen. I'm not saying that. That fight needs to continue. I'm also not saying that on the far right you need to become a consumer. I'm not saying people on the far right you need to embrace this plant. All I'm saying is now you have to consider this opportunity of bringing two sides together because of a plant. So this topic came up, and it was very interesting, and it was very provocative, and there was a lot of Q&A as a result of this, because in any other setting, in any other city, if we removed the plant from this conversation, it would have been very contentious. It would have. The right would have been saying the left was wrong, the left would be saying the right was wrong, and somewhere in the middle, there would have to be a security guard escorting somebody out of the room because they were throwing a shoe at the stage. You see what I'm saying? But now, because of the plant, we have a real conversation happening. There's a real conversation happening across the aisle, if you will, because of something that even I was against. Think about that. I mean, really think about that. Take all of your preconceived notions, whether you're left or right. Take all of what you thought or you believed about the left, or everything that you thought or believed about the right, and consider what is legitimately happening now in our country. We're coming together. Now, don't blame the right for coming in because there's an opportunity. Don't do that, because then we go right back to disagreement. And on the right, don't go back to pointing fingers at Cheech and Chong. Don't do that, because then we go back to contentiousness. You see, because the fact is, because of the plant, we can actually coexist. We can actually coexist in a way that has never been done in the history of our country before, because of a plant that has been chastised for decades. And I felt like I had to come on and tell you guys that, because this is so far beyond starting a business. This is so far beyond bridging gaps. This is so far beyond wellness and issues around the things that are surrounding the plant. This is something that can quite literally unify a country. I believe that. I believe it so much that I answered those questions on camera on a stage, and I had to bring it here to you guys, because again, Weed to No Basis is beyond building a sustainable cannabis operation. It's about bridging gaps. It's about shifting economies. It's about changing communities, but most of all, it's about consciousness. It's about what one thought this was about and flipping that on its head. Guys, John Boehner, former Speaker of the House, is now on the board of directors for a major cannabis company. Willie Nelson has now launched a major cannabis brand. The left is in the right is in the left, and somewhere in the middle is this wonderful plant that has brought us together. I just want to drop that nugget as food for thought, because here on Weed to No Basis, again, we're beyond the business. We want to step out of the jar, because you can't read the label if you're inside the jar. So these perspective guys are things that are going to help you move forward as a consumer, but especially as an entrepreneur in the cannabis world. You have to consider these things. Consider what we just said over the last 10 to 12 minutes or so. A plant is going to unify this country. It will. It's happening. Guys, thanks for tuning into this very short, sweet, kind of a diatribe, apolitical statement around the wonderful things that are happening as an entrepreneur, as a creator, as an instructor, as a leader, as a mentor to a lot of you in this industry. If you're watching this, remember, you're watching this because you have a Weed to No Basis. And if you found value, guys, leave your comments here. Leave your comments down below, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Share this, like it, subscribe to it, guys. The movement has started. It's up to you now to hit the button and let people know what we're doing here. Weed to No Basis, thank you for tuning in. Peace.